All right guys, it's time to build another GPU mining rig in 2024. I've got all the parts here. I'll break them down shortly, but today we're gonna be building a 6-card 3060 Ti GPU mining rig, and we're gonna be using this AAA wave metal frame. Let's get into it. Today's video is sponsored by ViaBTC, a trusted mining pool for some of the biggest proof of work cryptos. ViaBTC offers mining pools for Bitcoin, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, and even Caspa. When you mine on ViaBTC, enjoy hourly profit settlements, auto withdrawal settings, and even the ability to exchange between coins directly in their interface to save time and money. Auto withdrawals can be set up for any address or directly to the CoinEx exchange. ViaBTC is the largest pool for Bitcoin Cash, while coming in third for the big dog Bitcoin. This highlights the reliability and robust mining power that ViaBTC offers. Check out the link down below to get 50% off your pool fees for the next 30 days. All right, so what are the parts looking like? We've got two 3060 Ti P and Y cards, an Asus, and then 3 EVGA, with one of them being a 3-fan. Our motherboard, we're gonna be using a BioStar TB250 Bitcoin Pro. There's some motherboard settings we're gonna have to change on that. And then we've got a variety of other supplies here. So we've got 2 power cables for our server PSUs. We've got a 450 watt PSU, or just getting a 500 watt PSU to power the motherboard. And we'll chain this to these 2 PSUs, so this one power switch turns on all 3 PSUs. We've got some SATA cables to plug in our SSD drive. And then we've got breakout boards for our power supplies. All of these parts will be down in the video description if you guys want to build your own mining rig. Parallel Miner also sent us over this nice little link cable, which allows you to link these 2 PSUs together so they turn on and off together. We don't necessarily need that since we're going to be using the Molex to link these 2 together. And then a bunch of PCIe wires to power all of our GPUs. And then our frame, of course, with 5 high-speed fans, which we're going to be using this fan controller on so that you can control the speed of the fans higher or lower, because these fans can get pretty loud. And then a bunch of GPU risers. So first thing we need to do is actually get the motherboard onto the GPU rig. And this rig itself has standoffs that the motherboard will be going into, so we need to do that first. All right, so we want to basically test a few orientations of this motherboard to see which one lines up with the standoffs, and it looks like I got it first try. It's this orientation right here. Now that it's on there, you just want to get a couple screws and screw them into the standoffs. And this is basically just going to keep your motherboard from moving around. It's also going to make sure that it's not in contact with the metal base, because otherwise you could run the risk of short-circuiting stuff. All right, that is nice and secure, so we can move on to the next steps. I need to figure out how I'm going to have all 3 of these power supplies in here. I'm wondering if I can even fit 3 power supplies on here. Let's get that other breakout board on there. So I may end up having to do like a sideways type build, but I don't necessarily like that. So I'm wondering if I put them like this, do I still have room for this power supply anywhere? And it does look like this could fit back here. So that's probably what I'll end up doing, putting this in the back, just Velcroing all this stuff down. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get these out of the way for now. But now we're going to unravel all of our power supply cords and start plugging those into our motherboard. So let's get all these unwound from each other. The The CPU cable is going to go into the 8-pin connector right there. Then after that, we're going to take our motherboard cable and we're going to plug that into the 8-pin slot, which you cannot see because it's behind the RAM. And lastly, we're going to be taking our SSD, plugging that into our SATA cable. And then now we need to get our little SATA data cable, plug that into one of the board slots. And then this will go into the other port on the SSD. Okay, so we'll go ahead and tuck this SSD over here where none of these cables are going to get into the motherboard fan. So I will go ahead and stick this back under here so we can get all these other cables out of the way. And then I'm going to zip tie these back up so it looks a little nicer. And then we want to plug our Molex kit connector into this server power supply. And since these two server power supplies are actually going to be across the entire rig, we are going to use that linking cable I mentioned earlier. And how that works is it goes into this little, almost looks like a fan header. It goes into there. And we will wire that around this board. And that will go just over to here. And basically now these power supplies are linked. If one turns on, the other turns on. And this Molex cable means this power supply, when it turns on, will turn this on, and the same thing with off. So, all right, we've got our power connections established. Now we need to go ahead and put a GPU on and honestly just test that all these components work. Let's go ahead and put a riser on here. Plug it into, we'll do the main slot first. And then we'll go ahead and put a GPU on here and make sure that all these components work out of the box. We don't have any issues. So we'll just grab this top P and Y card. And honestly, I'm not even going to screw it in yet. Next thing we're going to do is plug in this GPU to get it to display. So one of these cables will go in here and another one will go into the riser, and then those will be powered by the server PSU. So the 6-pin side will go into the server PSU, and the 6+2 side is what goes into the graphics cards. Wire these back through here. And the second one goes into the riser. Ideally, you put this in the riser before the card's on, but as long as the card's not screwed down, you can still do it. Okay. All right. Now we actually need to plug our power supplies into the wall. So I need to unplug some of this stuff over here, and then I'm going to run it on 120 volts. This mining rig will work on both the 120 volt and 240 volts. So whichever you want to do, it'll work for you. Power supply cables. So the skinny one that comes with the 500 watt, that one's fine to use. But these other ones are 14 gauge, which can handle the amount of power that these server power supplies can put out. So I always recommend getting the 14 gauge. I've got a link to these down below in Amazon as well. All right, both power supplies are plugged in. I went ahead and screwed this GPU in. And now I just need to plug in this monitor cord so we can monitor what happens when we turn this on. So this will go in here. And then say a little prayer. We're going to flip this power switch on the back of this PSU, and both power supplies should turn on, and we should see our motherboard fan start spinning. Okay, that's a good sign. 12.1, and we're booting straight into Hiveos. All right, that is a great sign. So I didn't say this, but this drive already has Hiveos flashed on it. If you don't know how to do the whole Hiveos flashing or even what Hiveos is, check out this video because I've got a full 30-minute software guide to GPU, and we're not going to cover that in this video. We're just going to cover the build. But all right, that looks good so far. Booted straight up, that's what we like to see. You can see one 3060 Ti graphics card, and I'm going to go ahead and turn this off because I don't want it to start mining yet. One thing I almost forgot to do, and I'm going to have to take this GPU out to do it, is you want to put some sort of foam or insulation onto this metal support bar so that if any of the through-hole solder leads on the riser poke through their foam pad, they're not going to contact this metal and therefore kind of short out the entire GPU rig. And another thing we want to do is notice how this bar is only supporting the very back half of the riser. We want to move this bar so that it's in the dead center of the riser, because if that riser gets unplugged from the GPU like that, that's also going to cause issues. Luckily, this bar is customizable and you can move it wherever you want. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. So we'll take this GPU off of here, and I'm not going to unplug it. I'm just going to set it down here for now. And then on the sides over here is where I can unscrew this support beam and scoot it over to the next slot over. This is much easier to do if there's no GPUs on the rig, though I have done it when there is GPUs. You just have to hold up the weight of all those GPUs basically. Okay. So now this is going to perfectly support the middle of the riser, which is what we want. Now, to insulate this metal bar, I'm just going to put duct tape, maybe 2 layers across here. And that's going to ensure that we have good insulation and that this rig is never going to short out. And this is pretty thin duct tape, so I'm definitely going to do at least 2 layers. This is pretty rare, but when it does happen, it leads to very strange Hiveos errors, and it's like very hard to diagnose, so I always just play it safe. Okay, so that's 1 layer. Let's do another one. You might as well do a third. It takes 2 seconds and provides a little extra safety. So the next steps from here is we're going to go ahead and plug in the rest of the GPUs and just see if we can immediately get it to boot with 6. If we can, that's going to be really nice. And if not, then we'll have to do some troubleshooting. These mining rig videos almost always come with a little bit of troubleshooting, but hey, maybe we'll get lucky. Okay, so now that that's got a nice little bit of padding, let's go ahead and just put this graphics card back in. And I'm going to bias it a little bit to the left, since this power supply will power 3 on this side and this power supply will power 3 on this side. Okay, it's coming together nicely. So I like to just go ahead and get all my risers on the bar before I start plugging in any other wires. And there's 3. And how I'm going to do this to save on PCI cables is these 2 are going to share a splitter to the riser, and these 2 are going to share a splitter to the riser, and that way that saves me basically 2 cords. And by splitters, I'm talking about these 8-pin females to 2 8-pin males. So we'll go ahead and plug these in. Perfect. Same over here. Okay, now we need to plug in a bunch of cables into our actual server PSUs. But first, I'm going to go ahead and plug in my riser cables just to sort of clean up this mess. So this motherboard can technically support 12 GPUs, even though we're only going to be doing 6 in this video. All right, now let's start plugging in some of our power cables. Just to do some calculation on how many we're gonna need. So this power supply is gonna be powering 3 cards, 3 power cables for the GPUs themselves, and then 4 for this riser and 5 for the split between this riser. So I need 5 cords in this one and 6 cords in this one because one of these cards requires 2. So let's plug 3 more in over here. And actually, I'm gonna bias these to the back so they're not sticking out the front of the rig. Okay, so that's 5 on here. Take these and route them through the back here. And now we'll put 6 in on the other side. Okay, now we'll take these and route these through as well. And I'll bring you guys up here so we can start plugging in some GPUs. 1 power cord is gonna power our riser splitter. We need all 8 pins. Now we'll go ahead and start plugging in our GPUs. I'm gonna put the 3-fan card on the very left. Since it has the best cooler, the heat from the smaller cards will all come off each other's back plates. And this one will be on the end getting in the hottest position. But since it has a 3-fan cooler, it will be able to handle that temperature. And then I'm gonna put it right in this screw hole here. And now we need to power these, so we'll take our 2 cords we routed over here. Oh, and I ended up putting the 2-port card on this side, so I'm actually going to need to steal one of the power cords from that power supply and bring it over to this side, but no big deal. Okay, so this half of the rig is already finished. Let's go ahead and just boot it up again and see if we're still getting 3 GPUs showing up. Okay, let's turn this bad boy on. All 3 GPUs are spinning, that's a good sign. 12 volts, 12 volts, motherboard is on. We're showing 3 GPUs on the motherboard. All right, this is going very well compared to normal. Let's make sure we actually see 3 pop up in the rig. All right, there we go, 3 3060 Ti's. Let's continue on the build. So we just need to do the same thing as before. Plug in our splitter over here, as well as our single riser. And then start plugging in our GPUs. Plug these in, and if everything goes well, then we'll be on to cable management time, which is always a bit fun. So as far as power supplies, this is using two 750 watt PSUs, but obviously with the 70% rule, you only really want to run those up to about 500 to 600 watts. And since each of these power supplies is powering 3 cards, basically you can get each of these GPUs up to like 200 watts without issue, and this mining rig will run fine. So it's definitely spec to even be able to run like kapow during the winter if you want some extra heat. It definitely can handle it power-wise. All right, all 6 are in. Let's do the final test to see if everything showed up. Flip that on. We're booting. Fans are spinning. It looked like I saw 6 on the motherboard. We'll have to see when it pops up. All right, that is a great sign. It cut off the top one, but it starts at 0, so that means we have 6 GPUs. They're all showing up. So we got a couple more things we need to do on this. We need to plug in all of our high-speed fans so that the GPUs are cooled. We need to plug in an Ethernet cable so that we can actually test and make sure this thing can mine. And then I need to secure down all these power supplies and do a little bit of final cable management. But then this mining rig will be complete. All right, so how are we gonna power those fans? That's where this little guy comes in. Basically, it takes a 6-pin from your server power supply, and then it's got about 8 to 10 fan headers on it and a little blue knob so that you can actually control the speed of those fans. So you plug in your power supply cable, all 5 fans in, and then right when you turn on the power supply, it'll get power and all your fans will turn on. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's plug in the power cable we're gonna be using to run this. And go ahead and plug that into here. And then let's flip this bad boy around. I'm actually gonna pass this through here so that we can access it from the other side. All right, so now we can access this thing right here, and we're gonna organize our fan cables and start plugging those into the fan headers around this little device. Now these fans are gonna be very loud at the highest settings, so I'll probably put them down a little bit to start with. And the handy thing about these guys is they actually have a little sticky thing built in on the bottom, so I'll be able to just stick this straight to the frame once I get the rest of the cable management taken care of. So I'm gonna wanna zip tie these eventually as well, but for now, we'll leave them as is and just stick that back in there. But let's turn this down so it's not all the way at the max. Protect your guys' ears a little bit. And heck, while we're back here, I might as well go ahead and secure these power supplies using the Velcro command hooks that I was talking about. So I love these things. This is what I have in my mining enclosure, just the Velcro command hooks. They work super good at just putting stuff temporarily or stuff that you may want to take on and off relatively quickly. And that way I can just all right, and now that is not going to go anywhere. And I'll do the same for these server power supplies. All right, I wrapped up some cable management. It's nothing crazy, but got all the cables zip tied. All the power supplies are secured down to the rig. And you might be able to hear these fans are kicking out some cold air now, shooting it through the GPUs to cool them. So let's go upstairs on the computer and take a look at the specs on this bad boy. All right, guys, here you can see I've got the rig in Hiveos. I forgot to plug in the Ethernet cable, so I had to run back down there because it wasn't showing up. But you can see all 6 GPUs are showing up for a total zealous hash rate of 150 kilohash and roughly around 624 watts. This isn't at the wall, so it may not be totally accurate, but it's pretty roughly accurate. As far as our flight sheet, these are the overclocks I'm using if you want to copy those. But that's it for this rig build. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching Modern Mining. Peace.